Hi, this is saxophonist Greg Fishman, and today I'd like to share my system for creating the diminished scale as used over a dominant 7 flat 9 chord. My system is based on the idea that you're not going to be thinking half step, whole step, half step, whole step like the traditional system. It's based on the idea that you have to really experience the true flavor of each note in the scale as it relates to the chord tones. And so really the whole scale ends up being chord tones. So let's start out right away. Let's get right into it. We're going to play the C7 chord. Okay, just 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay, that's the first step. Okay, once you can do that, I want to add the first note of the diminished scale, which is the flat 9. That's going to be a D flat. And we're just going to add that note. That one note already gives the flavor of an altered dominant chord. And part of my theory of teaching it like this is your ear needs time to absorb each of these flavors. So it's not going to be helpful if you're just thinking half whole, half whole, half whole, if you're not experiencing the flavor of the harmony. So you take your time, repeat it. Maybe pause a little longer on the flat 9. Once you get comfortable, and you do that for a while, we add the next note, sharp 9, which is going to be a D sharp. Okay, same thing, pause on that note, and then once you get comfortable with it, you don't have to pause anymore. You can just play it in time. Let's add the next note. Next note's going to be the sharp 11, and this is going to be an F sharp. And it has a really beautiful sound. That's the note, right? And feel free to take your time and really explore each of these sounds by themselves. And you'll really know your location in the scale because you're going to recognize that each one has a different flavor. The flat 9 has a different flavor than the sharp 9, which is a different flavor than the sharp 11. And then our next note, the 13th, which is A. So we're going to add an A now. Okay? So now we have just one more note to add, and that's just the octave. We're going to put a high C on this thing. Okay? So here it is. And let's see how this sounds with the play along. This is from Hip Licks for saxophone, and we are using track 20 for this, dominant 7 flat 9 chord, so it's great for using with your diminished scales. Okay, now instead of playing that whole thing though, let's go through the steps. Okay, here we're going to add a flat 9. Let's add sharp 9. Okay, let's add sharp 11. Okay, let's add 13. Okay, and now the whole scale. Okay, so when I'm going up the scale, I'm not thinking half whole, half whole. I'm thinking root, flat 9, sharp 9, third, sharp 11, fifth, 13, 7, root. So I can start on any note. The advantage of the system is you can start on any degree of the scale or any chord tone. So if you want to start the scale on sharp 11, that's fine. it's going to start with a half step. But it doesn't even matter. You don't have to be so concerned about whether you start with a half step or a whole step. It's just knowing your location in the chord as to where you want to start. If you want to start on the 7th, it happens to start with a whole step, but it doesn't really matter. All that matters is you're going for a specific sound. And this is really important because when you're improvising and you're coming from one idea and you're coming up to this dominant 7 flat 9 chord, you don't want to have to start thinking, oh, do I start with a half step or do I start with a whole step, and where am I? You know, I have to get to the root. It shouldn't matter. You should be able to start wherever you left off with your idea in the previous phrase. You can take a note in the scale that's going to be very close, so you could even voice lead it if you like. And it will be any note. It could be the root, flat 9, sharp 9, the 3rd, the sharp 11th, the 5th, the 13th, the 7th. Any note is fair game. You can start anywhere you like. Now, this just barely scratches the surface with this scale because you could actually spend years, and there's just so much great stuff built into the scale. And I will have future videos where I talk about the interval construction of the scale and some different things you can do. When you look at the patterns, 1 through 9 through 120, they are all constructed with just the diminished scale. Okay? And I think once you go through this system of learning the scale the way that I think of it, you'll start to really experience these flavors on a deeper level. That, sharp 9, 3rd, root, flat 9, 13th, 7th, sharp 11, okay, etc. I'm really experiencing those. When I wrote that line, it's because it's almost like I could taste it, you know. I wasn't thinking about some kind of mathematical formula or anything like that. I was just hearing the flavor, experiencing the flavor of those, the combination of those notes, okay? So I hope you have a lot of fun with it. When you're going to practice this, now I know there are just 3 diminished scales, but I think people use that as some kind of shortcut, and it ends up not being a shortcut. It ends up making things more complicated for people because then they don't remember where they're starting. So just go around circle of fourths. Do this system that I just showed you. So the next scale you're going to do is going to be F7. Okay, you're going to add the flat 9. Add the sharp 9. Add the sharp 11. Okay, add the 13. Finally, add the root. Okay, so I would do it like that. Go in the cycle. First, add the one note. Then add the second note, the sharp 9. Okay? Okay, then you're going to go, etc. Okay? Till you get all the way through the circle with all the notes added. And I think that is going to solve a lot of people's problems with trying to remember half step, whole step. Okay? It just depends where I am in the line as to whether I start. A lot of people ask me, oh, do you start it with a half step or whole step? Of course, if you're starting it on the root, you start it with a half step. But you can't be thinking like that. When you're actually improvising, that really kind of disrupts the flow of thought if you're going to start thinking like that instead of just experiencing the flavors and the sounds. So I think this is going to be a more useful thing when you're actually creating the solo, so you don't have to disrupt your thought and start thinking in intellectual terms. It's sort of a different way of experience. You have to experience it. To me, if you're thinking it, you're not necessarily experiencing the flavor of it. It's more intellectual. This is more the taste of it, okay? So work with this, and then there will be more videos in the future where I talk about using the different intervals and things like that to bring out the flavor. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.